going to be following on from the last one where we learnt all about the colour wheel and colour mixing, and we're going to be learning about technique, how to make things look three-dimensional, and just a few tips of the trade. You know, how to start getting a few different appearances. You know, how to get go from dark to light, how to get some little sort of spots and lines within your painting, because the basis of all watercolour is called a wash. Now, you get variegated washes and flat washes, and everything that we paint in watercolour has a basis in a wash. So to learn how to do a good wash is really important, and this is what we're going to be starting to learn in this lesson today.
Exciting stuff. So what do those people at home need to be able to get started today? What sort of equipment do they need?
Okay, so as part of the lesson today, they will need a palette and just a few basic colours of paint, some brushes and a piece of watercolour paper.
Great, let's get started. Thank you.
Okay, hi, it's Jo again. We're going to be talking about how to paint. So we've had a bit of a play in the last session with some of the paints, so this time we're actually going to be applying paint to get the desired effect that we're looking for, and to start painting things to look three-dimensional. So this is what we're going to be achieving today. So even though it looks very strange, there is a purpose behind everything. So the first one that we're going to paint is just a box, a cube. The reason that I've chosen this is because we're going to be using the same colour, the same hue, but we're going to be using the techniques that we learnt or that we demonstrated in the last one, which is diluting the paint to get the different colours, and we're going to try and get each surface flat. So flat means exactly what it should be, so there shouldn't be, or there should be very little variation in colour. Right, so with painting this cube, because it's a largish area, I'm actually going to choose a larger brush. You'll find that if you try and paint large areas with a small brush and you want a flattish appearance, you're probably not going to get it, because the paint will struggle, it'll start drying out, you'll start getting lines and dips. So choose the right equipment for the effect that you're trying to get. So I'm going for my large flat brush. So I'm going to wet this large flat area here, because by wetting the paper, it gives me a huge head start. Because otherwise I'd be painting straight onto dry paper. It'll be drying as I'm putting it on there, and I'll be struggling to cover that area nicely without getting lots of lines in it. Okay, so it's just wet at the moment, but it's already starting to dry off. Okay, so now I've already prepared my little well of brown paint. So this time I'm going to paint it a little bit more carefully. I'm still trying to keep in the lines if possible. So once I've covered the area, I'm going to switch brushes, because now I want to start pushing that paint around a little bit to try and get it a bit more even. Now, because there's no particular direction of this, it's just a flat surface, you can paint across, you can paint up and down, you can push it around, you can do whatever you like. But as I said in the last one, you know, when you've applied your paint, don't just think, well, that's it, you know, that's how it's going to be. While it's still wet, you can push your paint around, you can start playing with it and doing things with it. See, that's nearly flat, or it will be when it dries. Okay, so that's probably going to be my darker surface. Now, while that's drying, we're going to go on to the circle. Now, the point of the circle, so why I included a circle in this lesson is because it's quite hard to get circles to look round, to go from a flat circle to a sphere shape. And there's definitely a technique to doing this. So this time I think we'll go with the yellow. Now the whole point of when you're painting circles is that you need to have your lines going round as well, because if you start doing squiggly lines, or you start cross-hatching, or using any of the techniques using straight lines, then you're not going to get that beautiful spherical effect. So we are going to start off again with doing our wash in the background. So we're going to wet the whole of the circle. So one of these brushes, it's called a flat brush, and in the old-fashioned terms it's 3/4 of an inch, or it's 19 millimeters. They are so useful, especially if you have an inkling or a desire to paint seascapes or landscapes or big skies. Absolutely essential. Okay, so it's all wet. Now we're going to go in with our yellow paint, and we're going to stroke it round. So you're stroking it round. So you can see, even by doing just one brush stroke around, that it's already starting to look round. You're starting to see that there's a curve happening. So then we go round again, but this time we don't go all the way to the edge. And you keep doing that. So it's getting paler and paler and paler. Now at some point, clean your brush. And neaten up those edges. Now you can keep on playing with that, but you get what the technique is, that you have to have lots of colour or darkness at one side, and then it gradually has to go round. Now you can, as I said, you can keep playing with that, and you can put more of this colour, so long as you keep going in the same direction, you keep stroking it round. And you can see that it's starting to look like a sphere. Okay. I think that's still wet. That's something never to do. Don't ever put your finger on wet paint, okay? Tip from Jo. Now with the triangle, so we've got the triangle in the corner, and again, so this is on the same basis as the cube. What we're trying to do is to get from a dark tone to a very light tone, but in straight lines, so different from the sphere. So we're just going to wet the triangle. Another great tip is don't have your coffee cup right next to your painting, because you'll either dip your paintbrush into it or you'll knock your coffee cup. And I've done that onto my painting. Okay, so I've wet the triangle. Now we'll go in with blue. So this time, what I've done is I've put my little lump of paint there, and I'm actually going in with really strong paint. So I'm actually going into the lump of paint, and it's quite gooey, thick paint this time that I put on my brush, because I want to get this side nice and dark. So look how dark that I can get it. So I'm going to stroke it all the way down the side of the triangle. And then I'm going to do another line. This time I'm going to wash my brush out. And I've just got a very light blue. So this time, you see how I'm pressing my brush down this time? Because I want those colours to mingle in. So again, wash your brush. So the paint should be getting lighter with every one you're doing. Your paint's getting lighter. Until you've got almost pure water there. Now you can go back over there and play with it and bring the blue more across. And take a bit more care than I did. But look how beautifully paint behaves, the watercolour paint. So there we go. That's a bit better. Okay. So we're going to go back to the cube and I'm going to do the brown, but I want it a little bit lighter this time. So I'm going to do exactly the same. I'm going to put a wash in on one of the sides. And then I'm just going to drop some paint in. And then, once you've dropped your paint in onto your damp paper, then you just push it around. But just think what you could use that for. So if you were to do something like that and you think, oh yeah, that's good. You know, think building walls, trees, you know, the bark of trees, things like that. So if you have that as your underpainting, and then you go in and you do your brick effects, or you do your you know, all the lines of the trees, and you put leaves and knots of the wood in and things like that. It's such a useful skill. It's a useful piece of knowledge to have that you can use when you know, for using for almost anything. Okay, now this weird looking shape here, the reason is I just want you to, if you have a go at this, please just draw a random shape. The reason it's a random shape is because I just want you to have a go at different techniques in watercolor. So when you do yours, I want you to try really hard to stay in the lines, because that's a skill in itself. Have some areas where you have a lot of water and other areas where it's almost dry. And just fill it with water. Okay, and once you've done that, I want you to go and find a colour. Find a colour that you like. Well, we're going with this orangey red colour. I'm actually going to go with switch to a round brush, because a round brush gives you a little bit more control than the flat brush. What you want to do is what we call, it's a technique called dropping paint in. So literally you're doing that, and it's not even going to spread on that area. Look. So you're dropping colour in. It's drying off already. I just want you to see what your paint does on your paper. And then get a different colour, try a different contrasting colour. And do the same again. And again, try different strengths of paint. So going with, you know, sort of a sticky clump of paint, and then going with really dilute paint and see what difference it makes, how it reacts differently on the paper. You see how that's almost dry up there. So I've gone in with, so I've got water now on this brush. Strike it down there. And then just do a few dots. Just literally, just drop some paint in. This is the way people learn how to paint. So it's, once you've got the basics of painting and you know how to apply paint, so you know what you need, you know how to apply it, then the next step is, okay, I can do the basics. I now need to learn the next step, which is different effects on paper. How do I get that tree to look like a tree? How do I get the tree bark to look like a tree bark? How do I get the brick effect on that house? How do I get the skin of that orange to look like an orange? And by experimenting and try different things and different amounts of water, different papers, different brands of paint, you'll learn. And the only way you can learn is by trying. But you will learn what your paint can do and how to get those different effects. Now the last thing I'm going to show you is just, so I want you to pick a familiar object. I picked a fish. So, and just hand draw it and just have a go at using the techniques that we've got here to try and get the darker areas onto your fish. So you might want a darker tail, you might want darker fins. We'll put the eye in. So it's using the things that you've learnt on an object that is now recognizable to you. So I'm just going to paint the body of the fish. So you can use a fish if you want, because they're quite easy to draw. I'm just going to put some orange paint out. Now with my fish, I wanted a darker tail, so I'm going to start off before this dries off too quickly, and I'm going to drop some orange into the tail. So quite carefully. And now, because I know that they often fan out, so this time I'm going to stroke the lines out like that to try and get some effect of the fanning on the tail. Again, this is all just play, so there is no right or wrong. You're just having a little bit of a play with the paint. Okay, so that's my tail. I'm just re-wetting because it's drying so quickly. And I'm going to make him darker at the top. And then because he's round, a bit like when I'm painting the sphere, so I'm bringing my lines down to try and give the impression that he's solid. I think we'll just put some more of that colour up there. Now what you can do while it's nice and wet is, if you want to make the impression of some scales, so because the paper is wet, you're not going to get really strong lines that don't bleed. So you get just a very nice little effect on there. Okay. Give him a blue eye. Put some blue in there for the gills. Okay, and then I'm just going to paint the fins as well. Now, if you find, like I have on that eye, that it's spread and you don't want it to spread, just wash your brush off on a bit of tissue paper and go back in and see if you can wipe it out. So you need to put your brush quite hard on the paper to take the colour out. So you can correct mistakes. Okay. I think we'll leave it there for today. So I hope just by that little there's a few exercises, it just gives you a starting point and hopefully some motivation to go and try it for yourself. Go and try a few different techniques and see how you go. All right, well, happy painting and thank you.